Hello, colleagues. Can you hear me well and can you see me well?
Hello, yes.
Great. So as you noticed, we are now in a different format of the Digital Anti-Corruption Conference. This is the meeting format. So it's my pleasure to see you in person and also all our participants. And we will be working today in this room. So starting with your presentations and then also I hope with other people joining us. Shall we wait a few minutes? I will check with colleagues. How is it going? Yeah, this entire breakout. Thank you. I have received a message that I'm now a co-host of this meeting. Okay, maybe while people will be slowly joining, I could introduce those who are here with us of what our work will be like. We will be recording this session, so anyway, whoever would like to watch it later to know this information, that would be also great to have it. And as you know, in parallel, we have 4 rooms taking place, and we have asked all participants to select a room according to their liking. We might assume that also some people who come from Ukraine might maybe not find it comfortable to listen without translation. So obviously we will then translate the recorded part and to make it available through our channel. So please don't feel disregarded by this detail. And my name is Diana Zubko. I will be the facilitator, but not moderator, host of this event, because the key presenters, the key figures here are you, exactly the panelists who have applied, who have reached out to us, to our call for expression of interest, that you would like to present your digital anti-corruption solutions. And we will work from 1 as we started until 2:30. And this our entire program of this room, which is called political party integrity or political integrity. We can speak about it in more general terms. It will be also divided in 3 equal parts. Each part will be taking 30 minutes or around 30 minutes. We do it for the purpose of people maybe joining from other rooms coming here, yeah, so they could rely on the agenda. And also we have 2 co-presentations, the one which we will start now, and then we will have a single presentation in between. That's exactly if we need to correct the time a little bit. And finally, 2 co-presentations at the end. So thank you very much for having joined right away and being so sharp on time. For this co-presentation, I see already the people whom I would like to introduce. And the first initiative is called Rahapada, which is translated as Manipot. And it was been developed and most probably still being developed. It has been developed in Estonia. And please, Tarmo, yes. Would you like to present it now? You would have approximately 10 minutes for your presentation, and then we can collect questions from the audience.
Sure, let's go. So do you hear me? Everything's good? Okay.
Everything's fine.
So first a few words, and then I would share the screen. So thanks for having us. It's a pleasure to show what we've been working on. Just to get started, I think it's fair to say that Estonians have for already quite a while prided themselves as being pretty low corruption country in terms of both, business corruption and political corruption. But at the same time, I think it's clear for pretty much everyone who is involved in this field that it is next to impossible to have zero corruption in politics. So there is inevitably some, and we have had in Estonia our fair share of political corruption scandals. The latest one was pretty much precisely a year ago when the government fell because of the corruption case where one of the big party donors had promised to the tune of 1 million euros to the Prime Minister party for some kind of real estate deal, and the defense police unearthed it. It became public. There was a scandal, and the government resigned. So this is the background, and the solution. I hesitate calling it solution. We developed it mostly actually as a proof of concept for something to see if it can be done in a technically coherent and smooth way. And as a background, in Estonia, the party contributions are all supposed to be public, and Estonian law does not allow corporate contributions to political parties. So they all have to be done by private individuals under their own name. Of course, no one is quite as naive as to believe that all the party funding is indeed public. But I think it's fair to assume that a big part of it is. So technically, every euro that lands on any party's account has to be reported to the, we have a separate body which is called Erakondade Rahastamise Järelevalve Komisjon, so it's a supervisory committee for party funding. And they publish a quarterly report, which are basically long CSV files, which list as I said, every euro that lands on a party account, together with the name of the person who contributed and what kind of a contribution it was. And so what we decided to do was to create a tool for visualizing all of this. And what I hope to show you is that we did visualize what we intended to, but then in the course of this, we discovered that this visualization yields a different kind of information that we didn't actually even expect to see. But I will try and share the screen with you, and so you can see this thing in action. Let's see if it works. So, yep, should be there.
All works well, thanks.
Okay, and so this is the tool. It's going to take a few seconds while the logo is spinning, and why it's spinning is that it's reading in to the tune of quarter million lines of data from the last ever since 2013, as you see here, and then it pulls up the visualization. It's all in Estonian, but it should be pretty intuitive. So I'll walk you through the main, or actually all the features. So on the right hand side, as you can see, there is a panel where I can set the parameters, and on the right hand side here is the visualization of the data flows. By default, it selects the latest quarter. So this is the dates are from 1st of July to 30th of September, the latest data that's available. It updates itself, of course, automatically. So whenever the new data becomes available, it gets pulled in and visualized. And so here, you can zoom into any party that you like. So this is the list of parties. We can remove some, older, smaller ones which are not relevant, and leave the ones which are relevant right now. And then you can see that there's three kinds of contributions. The first one, liikmemaks, is the membership dues. Then there are monetary contributions, where people just send money to the parties. And then the latest one, last one, which is actually the biggest, is the other. And this is, if you zoom in, for instance, current Prime Minister party in the latest quarter, then you can see that this consists of basically two big items. So one is the state contribution. So all the parties that are in are in the parliament get big chunk of the monetary contribution, and those who didn't make it to the parliament but gathered enough votes in the election get a little bit less. So this was in the latest quarter. This was 447,000 that Reform Party got from the state, and this is income from their own assets. So selling real estate or keeping money in deposit, which right now doesn't yield much, but this is the proportion, so you can see how much they got from there. And so this can be seen in case of all the parties, of course. But let's remove this. Let's take this out and see just the monetary contributions. So this, first of all, gives you a pretty good idea of how much money parties can gather from the membership dues compared to the contributions. And you would have to keep in mind that this latest quarter was run up for the local elections. So you can see the election years here. 2019 was the parliamentary elections. 2017 was the local election. 2015 was the last parliamentary election. So you can see the contributions in 2019. Monthly contributions went up to 1.2 million. So here the local elections involve a little bit less money. But now the interesting part is if you look in, you see these big bubbles, and there's a name of the person right next to them. So you can pinpoint and see how much money any person gave. And here we have this is probably also useful to see this is the grouping slider. So I can say, okay, I don't care about the small contributors. I want show me only the contributors who gave more than 10,000 euros in this period. Then the rest gets aggregated. So if I zoom in, then the rest gets aggregated into this big bubble. It says the average was 673, and there was 96 contributors which contributed together 64,000 euros. But the bigger donors are all visible here. And now you can see that of course, the membership dues get all aggregated in this granularity. But let's say we say, I want to see all of them, all the payments. And then you can see even the tiny ones, like 50 euro ones or 5 euro ones, probably somewhere here, 31 euros, and so on and so forth. So you can see basically on that level, you can see every single payment, 5 euro payment that was made. This is something which yields interesting information, because if I take the contributions out and leave just the membership dues, then this is one of those things that I said that we didn't expect to see, but you discover. You see that different parties have very different ways of treating the membership dues. There are some parties where you only have small contributions in membership dues, and then there are others like Centre Party, which also was the party that was involved in this corruption scandal that I mentioned before. That differentiate. So, and the names here are all familiar to Estonian people. So these are the members of the parliament who sort of kick back some of the salary they get from holding the party positions in be it in the government or be it in the parliament. They kick some of that money back to their party. And now, of course, you can slide this window and say, okay, let's see all the way back to 2018. So let's put the grouping slider on, because otherwise it gets really scattered. Then this is where you see that Reform Party is really only small payments. Only ones that are bigger than 100 euros are here. But in Centre Party, it looks very different. And the same thing then, of course, can be done here. So if we change to the monetary contribution, then you can find the big donors. You see Urmas Sõõrumaa is big one, Parvel Pruunsild, Reet Roos, Priit Alamäe. So all the big boys show up here. And of course, the final thing that I can show you in this 10 minutes is that you can filter by name. I can go here and then say that I want to see what has been, let's say, Urmas Sõõrumaa. So what he has been up to. So this just filters him out his contributions to all the different parties. And then we can add another guy who was on the other side of this corruption scandal, the guy who bribed the center party, Hillar Teder. So he shows up, no surprise. He shows up here. And then let's say we can of course, I'll try and remove this window here a little bit. Let's take Sõõrumaa out again and say Teder, and we can see when he has been contributing. So you see that his bigger contributions are in the earlier period, and then it was mostly Reform Party who was in the power back then. So this is the way how you can. I can also filter negatively, because this is a useful thing, because there are, Teder is a pretty usual name. So there's Tõnu Teder, for instance, which doesn't interest us. So we can say remove Tõnu from this and leave just Hillar. And then the final thing, perhaps, which we found a pretty useful thing. Let's say you're a journalist and you're trying to research the political contributions of Hillar Teder, and you see this picture. And now if you want to show it to someone else, then we made it this way, that you can just click this one, and this copies you the URL link. And if you just open it in the next window, then you can send the link to whoever you want, and they will see the exact same picture as you saw. So it sort of filters the same thing out, and you can share the view that you have there. So it's all written in D3, which is the low-level visualization library for based on JavaScript. So as you can see, it's reasonably fast given the data amounts. We are pretty confident that it's robust, so it stays fast all the way to millions of data lines. And it's something that is pretty flexible in a way that you can use as long as you have clean CSV data, then it can be adapted to all sorts of cash flow visualization with ease. But I guess this was my little bit more than 10 minutes. So thank you for the attention. And if you have any questions, I'm glad to try and answer them. Thanks. And I'll return the screen.
Yes, thank you very much, Tarmo. This is indeed a very interesting tool. I've been following, even though I don't know the names of the politicians, but I bet it's a good analytical tool and a very, very big help also to investigative journalists back in Estonia, or like people who would be doing the research, maybe. Yeah, like there are many ways to use the data. That's important that the data is there, and you were able to visualize it and do it also user-friendly for larger audience. Yeah. Okay, not to jump into my own questions, I would like to pass the floor to the next co-presenter, Septimius Sparvu. Could you please tell us about your instrument, and if you see some similarities, with the previous one, also please pay attention, like if something works differently with you.
Thank you very much. Very, very interesting tool. I will take a better look at it. I work with the Romanian think tank Expert Forum, and we are one of the leading organizations who observe elections in Romania, but also in other countries in the region. And recently, one of the most interesting topics for us became political finance. Our website started actually from a selfish reason, because we have a program which is related to political clientelism, in which we look at procurement and how political parties capture public funds and resources. And we published a lot of reports in which we needed to look into donors to see if an owner of a company donated to a political campaign, or if he's a member of a party, or all this kind of information. And the information is very scattered because it's published in the official Gazette, which is a very bad website. Actually, it was in kind of a flash until last year, so you couldn't copy anything. So we said, okay, let's gather all this information and try to let's scrap it and try to put it in a more user-friendly format. It took us around 1 year, to gather all this data. It contains all the data from 2006 to 2021, so it's updated. It's constantly updated. Unfortunately, we don't use APIs or any kind of other tools because we don't have what to take from the state authorities, which publish in very different formats. So political parties are required to send all the declarations on donations, on any of income and expenses in electronic formats. But actually, what comes up in the public space, can be from Excel to PDF, scan PDF, or things which you cannot use. So that's why we take all these files manually and try to put it in the same format. They also publish differently, so it's kind of a chaos. Actually, we thought it would take 2 months, but it's still not finished after 1 year and something. But let me show you the website. Share. Okay, so our website, it's called Banipartide.ro, which means the money of the political parties. I will Google translate it so that you can follow what's here. And we have what we gather here is mostly those information which contains names. So we are still working to gather data. For example, one of the next modules will be to put to match this data with the owners of the companies to see who donated, and if I don't know, a specific person has 5 companies and he donated with all of them. But this is the next step. But what we have now, it's political party revenues and expenditure. We have donors, which are natural persons or legal persons. We have subsidies, which is kind of a big issue in Romania because 5 years ago they were 1 million. The threshold was 1 million for all political parties. This year was 50 million, so you can imagine it's a huge increase. We have campaign funding. What we do, and you can see here in the lower side, is that we try to interpret everything and analyze. So we don't just put the information, but all this information is interpreted into reports, which get to the either to the oversight authorities, sometimes to the criminal investigation institutions. For example, our latest report about political funding in 2020 has shown that there were a high number of persons who cannot justify their incomes. So they had I don't know, a salary of 1,000 euros per month, and they donated 100,000 euros or something like this. So we are now trying to see how these persons got money. But so this is party funding. You can see here the sources. In blue, expenses, and in yellow here you can see no, sorry, actually in blue it's subsidies, in green other incomes, and in yellow you can see what it was spent. Here you have subsidies, and here we have some statistics on donors. Here, for example, are the biggest donors with the party and the name. Either it's a natural or legal donor, and you can see then also the number of donations. And what is more important, that you can search for the name of the of a specific person. I don't know, let's try this one. It's a rather common name in Romania. So you can see, let's see, Christian, for example, this is a former person, a former member of the parliament. The issue is that we, after 2016, as the GDPR regulations came into force, we don't have the identification number. So we don't know if Popescu Dan Cristian is the same with Dan Cristian Popescu. Probably taking into consideration is the same party, is the same person. But until 2016, we had these numbers, which is the kind of a social security number, if you want, and we could match this person. So the name are written in the same way. But for example, in this case, we don't know, and we don't have we don't have any manner to find out if it's the same person. Also, here we have the same. This is an interesting case. A company, if you can see, this company, it's called Victor Construct. It's donated to to a lot of political parties, from the left and the right side of the political spectrum. And also we have profiles per political party. Some of them don't exist anymore, but you have income, expenses, top donors per these parties, and other. This is where we monitor subsidies. You can see here how each party got per let's say November per each month. We are now building also profile per month per political party. This is the entire evolution, and you can also see per each party again income and expenses. And here we have the page on elections, where we have this is a general comparison. Let's look at, this is parliamentary elections, let's say 2020. And we have income and expenses per political parties here in the right side. Let's see, we calculated a cost per vote, how each party paid per vote. Actually, you can see there's a huge comparison. This party spent 60 lei, which you have to divide by 10 euros per vote, and this one spends around I don't know, 2 euros. Here is the structure of the revenues and the expenditure, and here we try to explain, because before 2015 the structure changed, so that's we try to unify it. But one important thing is that we have this, it's called data set. It's a structure which allows you to gather all the data. So basically all the data that we have in all these sections, it's also available here. And you can search, for example, if you find, let's say, Popescu Dan, you can see this name in all the data sets. This is donors, for example. This is donors for elections. So you can find all this a specific name or company in all the data that we have, and I think it's 300,000 rows or something, or even more. And it's downloadable, so anyone can download this information and play with it. And also we have a page on methodology in which explain how we get the data, how we scrapped it from these different parts, from the official gazette, from other sources, and how we match it with other, I don't know, data on companies, for example, income of political parties per year, how the legislation applies, for example, what political parties should pay, what are the deadline, what are the limits for donations, and all this kind of information. So I will stop here because I think time is out. But if there are questions, I'm open to answer.
Thank you, Septimius. I really appreciate you are following the time on your site. And indeed, the tools, the both, so the Rahapada and Banipartide, they are also, great to look into detail. Unfortunately, we cannot do it now, but we will take it as a pleasure to publish more information about it on the conference website and also share it. Now, I would like to ask if maybe there is one question or two questions from the audience. I see that Yava is already with us for the next presentation, but if there is anything right away. Okay, then thank you. It was really great. You have done that tremendous work. I'm really happy that you have these data sets available, and or you make them available, and that you have done all this search possible throughout the party finance. And right, then good luck to you, and please stay with us. Or I was trying to post it here, but in the room number 4, there would be a presentation now on exactly also on political party financing of the Ukrainian civil society organization. If you are interested, I can somehow try to send it to you on Facebook, for example, in a messenger, this link. But at the moment also, so yes, so just please write me in the chat. And at the moment, I would like to introduce here Yeva from Transparency International Lithuania with the tool which is called Manovalstybe.info. And please, Yeva, the floor is yours. You have an individual presentation, so you might take the time you need. But for example, we could agree also that after your presentation, we can collect the questions to all the 3 panelists, right? If you find it yeah.
Yes, it's perfectly fine. Hello, everyone. It's very nice to be here and to join the community of digital anti-corruption tools creators. I will quickly share my slides. You should see it by now on the screen. Yeah, it got a bit frozen, but it should work now. Yeah, perfect. So our tool, Manovalstybe.info, which if translated literally from Lithuanian language would mean my state, my country, is a tool dedicated to shedding a light on possible conflicts of interest and misuse of public funds. So it is very simplistic, nothing fancy at all, thus I will show it at the very end. But I think what is important in this tool is the rationale behind it and the use of data to spot the red flags and advocate for better management of possible conflicts of interest, for political integrity. And that's why I would very much like to share our experience in that and what we can see from this kind of data. So basically it was created in 2018 and we try to update it regularly. However, it is not updated by default because we always have to collect data from, for example, freedom of information requests, from publicly available information, and also try and clean it, make it understandable to everyone. We have 2 parts of this tool. So I will start with the first one. That is basically is aimed to tackle this problem. In Lithuania, around 7 out of 10 citizens think that state-owned enterprises are corrupt. And it's mostly because we have been tackling quite well the level of bribery in Lithuania. It has diminished tremendously, I would even say, in our country. But what we have seen as a problem, a bigger problem regarding corruption during the last few years is basically nepotism, party favoritism that has been quite embedded in state-owned and municipality-owned enterprises. And this is the rationale behind our tool and what we have done with the data to show and spot possible red flags in state-owned and municipality-owned enterprises in Lithuania. So basically, we collected information about the executives of 100 largest municipality-owned enterprises and back then 100 state-owned enterprises. We do have less now because of the reform. at the very start, we were able to get this data from the Center of Registers. However, as we've been moving forward, the data collection has become more difficult. Sometimes just trying to use GDPR, General Data Protection Directive, to say that we cannot provide information of who, for example, was a municipality-owned enterprise executive a few years back. So it does take quite a while to basically argue that this is our public money. We should know who is the executive of municipality-owned or state-owned enterprise. And so, well, we have managed to collect this data since then through various FOIA requests to SOEs and MOEs. On the other hand, we also collect the data about the participation of those executives in elections. So in Lithuania, it is forbidden to ask information whether a certain person belongs to a party, but the data that is publicly available is about being a candidate in elections. So we used that data from the Central Electoral Commission of the Republic of Lithuania. So we would know about the connections to political parties and movements. So we already did it twice, and we're planning to renew this data possibly next year. What we did, we mashed this data to see the connections, whether there are any, and to see also how fast, how often senior leadership changes in municipalities owned and state-owned enterprises. Because one of the problems that we have been seeing in Lithuania, that some executives, they are being the leaders, the seniors of SOEs for many, many years, and it has been identified as a problem. On the other hand, if we, for example, look at municipality-owned enterprises, we also could witness a very fast change if a political party changes after the elections. Now I'd like to show you some data analysis that we managed to do from cross-referencing this data. So in 2019, we learned that 1 out of 10 state-owned enterprise and 4 out of 10 municipality-owned enterprise executives are connected to political parties. And gladly, it was a lower number in comparison to 2017, where we saw that 4 out of 10 SOEs and MOEs executives were associated with political parties. We also tried to understand how long executives are in the office. And so we were also, in this case, happy that we saw that actually in comparison to 2017, 6 times fewer executives have been in the office for longer than 20 years. And as I mentioned previously, the tendency that we have been seeing quite a lot if we were analyzing municipality-owned enterprises, that if the political party, political group that was in the position, the ruling party in the municipality changes, and for example, the opposition becomes a ruling party, then usually executives are also changed. So basically, this part of our tool allowed us to talk about better management of possible conflicts of interest, more effective use of public funds, and fraud prevention. It does not mean that those executives are somehow bad or working bad, but it does empower citizens, civil society organizations to demand accountability from the government and decision making. decision makers, especially when taking into account that in Lithuania, almost 7 out of 10 residents think that party favoritism is one of the most widespread forms of corruption in the country. So what has been happening in Lithuania around this topic, we have been seeing reforms regarding state-owned municipalities to begin with. We have been diminishing the number of SOEs in Lithuania, and it seems that we have a little bit more clarity now about their work. However, municipalities still remain a little bit of unknown area with more questions to ask. And this is what our second part of the tool focuses on. So basically, another set of data and analysis is aimed to increase the level of transparency and accountability when it comes to the allocation of publicity funds on municipal level, thus also encouraging fair competition among media sector actors and contributing to greater long-term sustainability of media outlets. So what have we done to advocate for better, for more transparency and accountability regarding the publicity funds in municipalities? We collected data from municipalities, first of all, via freedom of information requests, to understand where they spend our taxpayers' money if they want to publicize certain information for citizens, residents of their region. In addition, we collected data on the EU investments for publicity that was obtained from the Ministry of Finance. And that data we compared with the data on interest declarations obtained from the Chief Official Ethics Commission and data on candidates of elections from also the Central Electoral Commission, which provided us an opportunity to see the links between the beneficiaries of those publicity funds and politicians together with their spouses that were indicated on interest declarations. So what we've seen from this analysis is that actually the average contract value received by a politician-affiliated company was larger than the average value of other contracts. In addition, we learned that 3 out of 5 municipalities bought publicity services from politician-affiliated media. And it's also very interesting to know that not only media and public relations agencies received the money, but also construction, frozen foods, and other companies that were indicated as publicity services providing companies. In addition, we learned that 1 out of 10 recipients are connected to politicians, and they received 1/5 of all publicity costs. We also looked at the EU investments, and well, it seems that there were better checks and balances when it comes to EU investments, because every 7th euro of those investments was received by a politician-affiliated company, while in comparison to municipal and state budget, every 5th euro was received by a company that is affiliated to a certain politician. So basically, this is the data that we matched and that we have in Manovalstybe.info tool. We use it for advocacy efforts. We are not saying that, for example, municipalities that buy some sort of publicity from politician-affiliated companies are somehow working shady. But what we try to say that it is important to ensure proper monitoring of conflicts of interest that it is important to ensure that we do have whistleblowing channels, and that we aim for achievable and measurable anti-corruption objectives in state-owned companies, in municipality-owned companies, in municipalities themselves. So these are the red flags that we were able to see from the data analyzed, and I will happily also show you the tool itself, just to understand how it looks like. So as you can see, it is very low budget, very simplistic tool where we basically put all the data for people to download if they would like to do that. So they can download, for example, this is the information regarding the elections. And we can even see it from the independence of Lithuania from 90s. So it is available to everyone in open data formats to download. And then what we try to do, we try to help out with the analysis. So anyone who is interested could already spot the red flags or take interest in their own municipality. For example, this is the name of the municipality. We can see how many funds it received, how much money they spent for publicity, and how many funds they received from EU investments, and what kind of companies obtained that money. So this is how it works. Then we can, for example, check the politicians. And for example, this is the company that received some funds, and these are the politicians that are connected to the company. And there is some extra information, for example, whether a person indicated is a shareholder, whether he is just a staff member or executive of a company. And then regarding state-owned and municipality-owned enterprises, we also can check different kind of data through different kind of angles. For example, here we can check which parties are associated to state-owned and municipality-owned enterprises executives, how many times those executives have been changing in different state-owned and municipality-owned companies. Also, we can check by municipalities. So as you can see, there's a lot of data, and you just need to go and try and find out what interests you, basically. And actually, what is interesting that, for example, now we can understand more about state-owned municipalities executives, but so far as I know, at least, it's the only database where we can learn who owns municipality-owned enterprises. So this is basically how it looks like. And if there are any questions, please let me know. If not, I'm happy also to share our contacts in the chat box in case you would like to learn anything else afterwards.
Thank you, Eva, for the presentation. And right, I would like to open the floor for comments, please, and questions likewise. We have about 10 minutes, so we can really discuss things. Let me check, maybe, no, also not in the chat. Okay, I mean, I would have a question probably. Would you please share if you had an experience of cooperating with IT business, like who are the developers, these magicians who made it happen behind the scenes, that the tools look so attractive and are usable? If you could, maybe each of you give a short comment, please.
So perhaps I can start because it's pretty straightforward for us. We have friends IT company that helps us to develop the majority of our tools, and so they really know our mindset behind it, and what kind of advocacy points we seek with that, because we never try to do tool just to have it, but we always, when we create it, we try to understand what benefit it could bring and how we could use it for advocacy. For example, to send it to the same state-owned and municipality-owned enterprises, to present it at various commissions, at the parliament, and so on. So yeah, it's nothing special from our side.
But good to have, this sort of friends. Tarmo, maybe you would like to share.
So just again, I think I need to give a few words of background in this. What the organization that I work for and that I created a year ago, this tool that I showed is a small, tiny piece of what we do, and most of what we do otherwise is centered around data and different kinds of data, survey data, open data. We use lots of different data sources, and the tool that you saw is actually very light on the data part. So it just pulls in the CSV files and visualizes. And most of we have released a few more things similar to this. What we have released are basically the bits and pieces of the tools that we do develop for ourselves. And if we find it useful and find that someone else can use it, then we make it public. We make it available for everyone else together with data oftentimes. But coming back to this particular one, like I said, it's not technically overly difficult. I mean, D3 is a library which is not trivial one, so not everyone can use it. So this was basically, we had one good coder who could work with this, who familiarized himself with the problem, and it was him and me working together. The rest of the things, we do use some outside assistance from the IT firms, but mostly we do our development in-house. And so we have people. It's just 6 people, but I have personally background in coding and programming for many years. I write Python myself all the time. So most of the work is actually heavy on the data side. The visualization part is the easier part. And this is what you saw.
Right. Yes, this can be elusive also. Thank you for sharing indeed. And Septimus?
Yeah, actually, we have a IT expert, which is working with our organization. So he helped us with the programming. Otherwise, the data scraping, which needed some scripts. Otherwise, most of the data. So I took care of the, let's say, mapping. Firstly, understanding what's out there and what can be used. Mapping, the concept was developed by me and the IT expert. And for the visual side, because the taking into consideration, I mean, we didn't start with a small website and grew in 5 years. It was both political finance, and campaign finance and subsidies and all these kind of things together. So we needed. It was rather difficult to find the common side of representing things. So we worked with a company which provides visualization services. So this is what they do. They work on the graphical side of things, let's say, and we had tons of sketches and what you can show, because one of the hard lessons was that you can very easily misrepresent information. So it was a process to choose what we show, and we are still working on it. For example, now I was saying we are planning to develop a section in which we will show the ownership of the companies that donate, to see who's behind them. And we are discussing for some months what to put there and how to put there, and what would be interesting to show. So I think it was after gathering the data, this was I think it was a very difficult thing what to show. Also, what I forgot to say is that our tool, initially we didn't have very well in mind who is for. As I was saying, it was a selfish purpose to help us find data. But now we saw that prosecutors use it, for example. Of course, not as a proof in court, but to find data easier to see if a specific person might be politically connected. Or journalists use it from Romania and outside Romania. So now what we are trying to do is talk to all these organization institutions and see what they want. So we're trying to develop the database, not just for the general public, but to see how this very specialized institutional organization could use the visualization or downloading it in a certain format or all these kind of things. So I would say that this kind of database is a continuous process to tweak it.
Thank you. I see the hand of Tarmo. Please.
Yeah, I had just when Septimus was saying a few things, I thought I'd comment on this. I think there were a couple of really good points. So one is this, that we have also found and are trying to adhere to, that when you're trying to visualize the data, then you actually need at least 3 skill sets together. You need someone who has the subject matter experience, who knows about the stuff that you're trying to explore or visualize. Then you need someone who's a sort of data scientist who knows how to gather and present the data. And then you need a visual designer who can know how to convey the information in a visual way. And sometimes you can find these skills represented in a single person, but normally you would not. So you would need to work in teams of different skill sets working together and trying to bring it forth. And then the second thing that Septimus mentioned was that you do need to keep in mind whom you're trying to talk to. So it can be, a general purpose tool that can be used by different people. But what I have in mind is that, for instance, these 3 projects that we did present are all ostensibly on the same issue, but they approach the issue from the different angles. So what we did, I can speak of my own experience, we quite purposefully wanted to make a tool that allows you to explore the data, because the Estonian oversight organization has basically visualization engine on their site, but this is geared towards searching the data. So if you know what you're looking for, then you can find the data. But we try to pull it together in a different way, that you can just look at it and then come up with your questions. And then you can go and search. But basically, this is for pulling together the data and giving you the helicopter view. And then you can drill in. Then you would use the different tools. But you don't necessarily need to know the name of the person you go and search. You see that, this is the big bubble. So let's look into it. Let's see what's there.
Thanks. Right. And it's very, I find it an important note you made, that we also need to think of who is, for whom we are doing these tools, yes, for whom they exist, and who would be the user. Of course, this is always this question of, the audience and the creator, and should the creator be guided by the audience? Should the audience be catching up with the creator? So, maybe that would be the last question I ask, but how could you evaluate your audience? Who would you say, are you satisfied? Is it vast? Are you growing the audience? What do you do to have these users by your side?
Well, in our case, since we are non-governmental organization, and we advocate for anti-corruption standards, for transparency standards, we don't necessarily have the goal to have many users. Sometimes we need to find that one red flag, for example, that we can present to decision makers and say, okay, well, we need state-owned municipalities reform, because we see that we have executives that are working for over 20 years and even longer, and nothing has been changing. But on the other hand, we also think about our stakeholders and target groups, and my colleague Demante is here as well. She will be talking about media transparency. So for example, in media case, the tool that we created was the only way for journalists to find certain information. And then in that case, the audience has been growing a lot. But then, as previously mentioned, usually the goal is not about the number of people that come and check our tool, but the theory of change, the step that we want to change with the data that we analyze and we present to the others.
Thank you.
Well, if I go next, then like I said before, we first and foremost developed the tool for ourselves for monitoring, and so even if no one else would be looking at it, it would still be useful for us. So we would use it ourselves. But the main audience that we keep in mind is mostly media, who wants to keep an eye on things and wants something that they can present and communicate with. So it's usually, I found that if there are few journalists who have inclination and time to dig deep, but most of them just don't have all that much time for any single story. And so it helps if you present the information already in a sort of a attention-catching way. So this is where I would say the media is, for this particular tool, is one of the big ones. And then, of course, you can see that whenever the data comes out, the news come out, then there's a flurry of activity once in a quarter. People come and check and see if they can catch up something, if they can find something, and if they do, then it's great. If they don't, then we'll wait for the next quarter.
Thanks.
So in our case, we are this year was mostly because I think we kind of finished it at the beginning of this year. What you see here, so 2020 was for development. But what we tried, what we will try actually in the next period, and fortunately we managed to develop this tool in a project with IFES. Is to talk to our potential beneficiaries, so to really go to meetings and send them some kind of information to understand what's about the tool, because we got feedback from people we didn't know that they will use the tool, saying that okay, it's very useful, you should spread it to more prosecutors, for example, or journalists. So what we are doing next in the next period is to go to communicate with these people. We will have some public presentations on how the tool works when we'll be a little bit more updated with these new modules we're talking about. We will have probably a hackathon to see what we can do better with the data, where we hope to invite all kinds of people who are interested in and give them the data. Okay, let's see what we can do better. And also when we have reports, we always make references, because I was saying that data is there, but you need to interpret it. And as there are not too many journalists, unfortunately, that work on this topic, we also do the interpretation. And I would say that our reports are quite well received by the media. So this is one good mean to popularize it. But otherwise, we are also trying to go local and work with local journalists and have public presentations to make them more engaged and see what's about and how we can help them.
Thank you all a lot for the answers and this dialogue. I have really enjoyed it. And unfortunately, I mean, for me, to stop this dialogue, but we need to proceed on our agenda and how we plan. Please also stay with us as we would move to the next session. This would be the last block of this room, of the discussion in this room. And we have two initiatives to co-present. One is Sonia Yategu. I mean, I'm sorry if I pronounce it not correctly. I really like how my Estonian colleague pronounced it. It sounded very, very nice. And we have Stateowned. So the first initiative from Estonia and the second from Lithuania, Pavel and Natalia. Welcome, the floor is yours. I would suggest you have 10 minutes for presentation and then we see if there are questions.
Yeah, definitely. Hello, everyone. Also, and it's Sina Yategu, so your pronunciation was very, very good here, which stands for word and action in English. So I guess that we're going to use this naming in this presentation. And let's check if I can share my screen, the typical question during the COVID, right? So I hope that you can see the presentation slides. Let me know if not. Well, so today we're going to speak about Word in Action project that we held together with Natalia Kitam, also presented here in this gathering. So what we're doing, we're building a political promises tracking platform and the social network in one place, which is basically a new type of media that we would like to develop. Here's a little bit about the problematic of the project itself, why we came up with such an idea and the solution. The first moment is that governance a little bit moves more to populism, and we, even a small country as Estonia, or in the Baltics, we still see the moments where political sides and other public sector authorities are hiding some facts, and there are also moments of corruption that we would like to speak about and a little bit more investigate and give people more tools to investigate this. The second point is that media produces untrusted clickbait, unfortunately. Why we see that the trust in the society, basically for the traditional media, is right now decreasing, that they are producing very much lots of information which is probably unfiltered, or from the other side, it's so much filtered that there is no possibility to track the source from where it's originated. The third problematic that citizens are more passive and manipulated, probably due to the mentioned above facts. And the field experts are sometimes silent, and this basically gives less hope to reach the results, the brighter future, let's say. So in business, we can call it as a bad management in most of the cases, but here for some reason, we see that information is flow is very messy and not much changes happen, unfortunately, on the big level, on the stage. So we are from Estonia, a tiny country, #1 in Europe in number of unicorns per capita, and our government action plan is still in one PDF file. And this is something which is unacceptable. It's not dynamic. There is no possible somehow to reach it. The links are changing, so it's very hard to track this stuff. What about your country? At least we have this situation here in the Baltics, but we guess that this is very, very much advanced, what we're talking about. But how can we make it even more advanced? Here, we'd like to show you that the leading country is not just a single PDF file. It's a long-term strategy that could be followed by the whole society from one place. And our idea is to change it to a global governance Kanban that is available online, where people are participating, adding their comments, discussing, tracking the situation, which is going on the governance level. So what we've done, we created MVP for governance Kanban called Sina Yategu. It's live, and it tracks more than 6,000 promises that were made, especially on the elections, the municipal elections that we had this year. And we basically gathered all the platforms, all the programs in one place where people were basically there wasn't a possibility to track the promises that politicians made at this time. Right now it's possible to track it on time, live, what's going on with those promises and those things. And here, basically our goal and our idea is to validate our idea in the Baltic states, not only in Estonia, and what we're going to do with this platform, and we wish to get to this point as much as possible, is to automate the process of searching and filtering those promises from available sources, media, social media, and so on, that people will get one source of many other sources. So basically gathering this information. And I will just show you quickly how does it look like. Right now, the website is working in Estonian and Russian. We hope that it will also move into English translation soon, but we have a very good here in this moment structure that you log in with your authentication method, which is an ID card or some other trustable methods, where we can identify the person. Like, you can basically stay anonymous here, but it makes it more clear, basically on the Wikipedia level, that everyone is basically possible to for everyone it's possible to interact with the platform, and it's quite easy to start with this. You just come with your personal number, identity code. Sorry, it's not a mobile ID user. Yeah, that's true. Get into, and we will be just able to monitor the promises that we have and participate in the discussion right on the platform. So as you can see, we have different topics. So for example, if you would like to track everything which is connected to corona pandemics, and everything that is connected to corona pandemics within Estonian politics, then here we gather all the promises and from different political platforms, which are basically mentioning the corona pandemic here. And you can track basically many stuff. For example, here is one of the topics that there was a goal for Ministry of Education to get until 90% of vaccinated rate among the teachers. And here we can track what was promised and in which words, with the sources mentioned here, what has been done. So we have the whole timeline with the dates and different sources, media sources gathered in one place. And basically, if we will be able, then we can just check if we have this number right now. It is possible to track and change this data, so anyone basically is involved here. So it's possible to do these changes, and it will be visible who made those changes. And also there is such methodics that we're trying to follow, and basically right now it's working quite automatically. It means the strength of the promise. It involves just 5 points. If the promise has budget, the responsible person, the responsible authority, if it has also some goals as a deadline, then basically we can say it's quite strong promise, but that doesn't mean that it will be fulfilled. And then you can just basically measure it in some way that was it strong, but maybe it led to some successful result, or maybe it was not so much strong without the budget, but it went through the process where everything has been like fulfilled in one place. So basically you're also able to see it through the history of this page. And also we have a search where it's possible to manipulate and filter this data in a way as you wish, and as we have basically the whole political programs here in one place, so it's quite useful to have such on Google with the different statuses. Like if I would like to track what is still in progress, for example, with the corona pandemic, I can do it also from search, or search by some specific responsible person, politician, or authority. And let me move quickly to presentation. So what we see right now from the statistics, that 58% of global citizens are dissatisfied with democracy. And the increasing risk of manipulation of the mass consciousness in order to distract people from economic problems, mistakes in government policies, and play in the national feelings, it's basically cultivating xenophobia in this case. And what if the solutions that come from the same place, the social media, big data, AI, basically will solve the problems that we have right now. So we want to build the most boring mass media ever. And we want to talk only about what's really going on, where every money trails leads, and who is personally responsible for the things happening around. Here's the brief slide for our images. So Natalia is a co-founder and media expert with more than 20 years of expertise in media. And I'm representing more IT and development side here, but we're looking for more volunteers, people interested in the platform and ready to speak about it. So you can ping us at hello@sanitega.ee, and we hope that we'll grow together. So thank you, and yeah, waiting for the questions for the chat and
thank you very much for the dynamic presentation. I was carried away and I forgot I'm the moderator, and then I took my phone to check the time, what is going on. But we will of course go back to the get to the questions. But first I would like to pass the mic to Deimante. If you could please cover also a similar approach. I like that you, Pavel, you finished with media, because this is exactly we are now starting with, Deimante. Welcome.
So hello everyone, and thank you so much. I cannot share my screen because Pavel, thank you so much.
Already stopped. Thanks.
Thank you. So I think that my slides should already be up in your screens. Okay, great. So as you mentioned, I would like to use this time to tell you more about one of our initiatives. Our online tool called Stirna. And the name Stirna is actually an abbreviation, which stands for press, television, internet news websites, radio, and news agencies. So as you can judge by the name, focus is on the media transparency in Lithuania. The Stirna itself, it was launched in 2013. And we've been updating it regularly. The last time we've updated was in March 2020, so not so long ago. And the online tool aimed, and of course still aims, to first provide information on media ownership in a very simple and user-friendly way, because right now such data is usually dispersed among very different official websites with no easy access. So Stirna.info works as a media register, and of course another goal is to showcase the links between politicians and both national and regional media outlets. Actually, our Ministry of Culture and some other different institutions, they've been planning on developing a centralized media register since 2012, but no such database has been made available to the public yet. So Stirna.info still remains the only free of charge source that provides such information in Lithuania. Now, why such tool was needed and still is very relevant these days. So according to the latest survey that was conducted in November this year, about a third or 34% of Lithuanians do not trust media. They doubt their credibility and their role as watchdogs, accuse them of being biased, and the situation is actually getting worse, and it is worse than it was a decade ago. At the same time, what we've been hearing from other different research, particularly in the regions, media outlets admit that due to financial reasons, as there are businesses and some of them make most of their profits from advertisements and paid articles, it makes them more likely to be pressured by local politicians and businesses. That was especially very prevalent during the pandemic, and still is, of course. And according to our research that my colleague Yeva presented, media outlets have close relationships with municipalities as well. From 2015 to 2018, municipalities have spent 8 million euros to publicize their activities, with 1/5 of the sum allocated to media outlets related to politicians. So such tools as Stirna.info, they help to shed more light on the complex networks of media, businesses, and politicians. Now, speaking of more technical part of the tool, data in Stirna.info is based on several different sources of information. We take information from the Ministry of Culture and the Lithuanian Radio and Television Commission, Chief Official Ethics Commission of Lithuania, as well as Central Electoral Commission. And from the first two, we collect information on all media outlets existing in Lithuania, as well as their owners, and we renew this list before each update. And then through FOIA requests, we each time ask for interest declarations of public servants and politicians and leading officials, so that we receive from Chief Official Ethics Commission, as well as the list of all Lithuanian election candidates, which we receive from Central Electoral Commission. And then what we do with this data is we matched it. We match media ownership data with interest declarations and candidates list in order to see what links are present. Now I have few slides on how the site looks like. However, what I will do right now is I will turn off my slides and share the site. So as you can see, the site looks very simple and it's very easy to use. In the main page, what we see instantly is 5 most popular media outlets in Lithuania. So Lietuvos Rytas, TV3, Delfi LT, and Vienas Binies. I know that those names mean nothing to you, maybe as Delfi. So I will use this as an example because it operates in both Latvia and Estonia as well. So if we would press on it, we could see that Delfi LT is being owned by UAB Delfi company. And we can actually see further relations of who are the other shareholders. And we can also see other media outlets who are also being owned by the same company. So you can see the legend on the bottom. It's of course in Lithuanian. So the green means politician, the blue one is media outlet, and the purple is owner. So as we can see from the legend, Delfi LT has no direct link to any politician. And we can see if we would press on each year, we can see how the ownership changed throughout the years. And we can do that with any media outlet operating in Lithuania. We have 1,056 of them at the moment. So if I would like to search for any of them, I could just type in the name, for example, and it would lead me to the ownership network of that particular media outlet. Now, if we would scroll down, we would see that Stirna actually holds a database, large database of such information from 1996 to 2020. And we can also go through any year that is of interest for us. If I would choose, for example, the year 2010, I could see that in that year we had 460 hard press media outlets, then 54 television channels, 54 radio stations, and we can also see a category of politicians and civil servants. So we can see how many politicians each year, or civil servants or their spouses, had a link to at least one media outlet. So for example, in the same 2010, there were 26 politicians and civil servants. In 2020, 43. And I could choose whichever politician that is of interest for me, for example, Aidas Kiesas. And I could see that he is one of the owners of Plungės žinios, which owns 2 media outlets. And he is marked green because he is the only politician among the beneficiaries. And what is also important to mention is that you can download this information in open data format, and any person who is interested in this information can analyze this data himself or herself. So now I would like to come back to the slides. I know that I'm getting out of time, so I will try to be very quick because I just want to share several insights that we saw when we last updated Stirna. So for example, in 2020, we saw that 43 politicians, state officials and their spouses owned 83 media outlets. Among those politicians, there were members of parliament, municipal council members, head of department of municipality administration, a member of European Parliament, as well as 13 former candidates in election. I will skip this slide because I've already shown this information, but as we have this huge database, we can actually see how these numbers changed throughout the years. And what we saw is that, for example, since 2009, the number of politicians or civil servants that had these links doubled over the last decade. And if we see also we go through that timeline, we would see that overall, since 1996, 93 media outlets have been owned by 55 politicians and state officials. And so this whole information gathered allowed us to better advocate for higher ethics and transparency standards in media, to share our recommendations. Some of them you can see right now on your screen, to share those recommendations with journalist associations, authorities responsible on how to better manage their risks. And of course, for those who are interested to get more familiar with media outlets they read and to evaluate this information that they read more critically. So thank you so much. I will share the link to Stirna in the chat box, as well as the I think that Ieva already shared the email address of TI, so you can definitely contact us.
Thank you, Deimante. And so now we have concluded the block of presentations within this room, and we still have a few minutes to proceed with questions should we have in the audience. Yes, please, Septimus.
Thank you. Actually, this is a question for related to all the platforms. How does the issue of protection of personal data fits with publishing this information? Because I see, for example, that you had names of owners and all this kind of information which are considered to be personal data. In our case, for example, they are already public, so it's just rearranging it. I know some platforms use a login option, and therefore if you log in, it's considered that it's no longer public. I mean, you have to do some steps and agree with some conditions in order to consult this data. But how is in your cases where you have this kind of public information?
I can start. So it's, to be perfectly honest, it's getting more difficult. A few years back, we didn't have such issue with this, but for example, right now, but maybe you've remembered that she presented Manovalstybe.info, which also holds information on publicity funds. So if few years back, we didn't have an issue with asking such information from Central Electoral Commission, right now we do have a bit of an issue with that. However, when it comes to Stirna, It's as you've said, most of this information is actually already public. For example, lists of election candidates. Our Central Electoral Commission posted this information on their website, as well as interest declarations. However, this data is usually not analyzed, and it's you know, what is left for us to do is just to cross match it. The same with media owners, to be honest. So I cannot tell you that, like right now with this particular platform, we do have an issue. However, it is becoming one, and we're in contact with different institutions, and we are trying to kind of solve this matter. So it won't, you know, kind of be a stop or an issue for our other platforms. So I can, I'm sorry, I cannot give you like, you know, like direct and answer.
I think it's a very good question. From our side, again, I have to separate different things. So the tool that I presented works on fully public data. So Septimus, you mentioned that you had this problem separating the names because the ID code or the social security code was stripped. In Estonia, also the social security code for party contributions is stripped, but there's a birth date. So we hash the name and the birth date, and this allows you to separate the people with similar names, which is more of a case in Estonia for Russian names. There's more like Sergei Ivanovs than the Estonian names, but there's a way of working with this. But then again, the other side, this is what I hinted at before, and we won't have, this is not topic for today, when I said that the rest of the stuff that we do can be technically and data science-wise quite advanced. And we do have quite a bit of data that we can cross-reference from different sources, and then we can find different ones, like for instance, the party membership in Estonia is also public. If you belong to the party, then the fact whether you do belong into the party right now is something you can check from the business registry. However, you can't check the past. But then again, we happen to have access to the data source where, you know, someone has scraped the page where the current status of the party membership is 4 times a day for last 3.5 years. So I have 20 gigabytes of data of people moving from one party to another, which I can again cross-reference with the other things. There's a way of getting the data from public sources where you can you know, it gets into Bayesian modeling, where you can create the synthetic distributions of the data which do not contain any personal data, but which you can sample on the level of particular parameters. And so this is a way around of the personal data restrictions, but you can still look for the connections that you could on the basis of granular individual level data. So there's a bunch of different ways, and it's a really interesting field where you can actually find technical ways of working with really specific data without accessing the individual data. And on the other hand, you can, you know, if you're technically savvy enough, you can probably find ways of cross-referencing data and creating the individual matches that you wouldn't otherwise get.
I have noticed that Natalia raised the hand. I would like to give floor to you, Natalia.
Yes, thank you for this question. Actually, all what we are doing is sensitive and emotional for politicians. Even as Tarmo told, all sources what we are using are public, and there's nothing, any conflict with legislation. But you know, when you buy, you found in big data like one party in another region, just copying and pasting some promises, and you understand it absolutely exactly. You know, in big data coming out something nobody's seen before, even all information is around there, and we always using link to the source where we got it. And we needed to archive those, because one or another party using just Facebook page or some picture, some PDF, they just delete it. But we need to prove it is not our fantasy, but just it is. So it is emotional issue, but not legal issue. And emotional is it because we try to change the rules and culture to make them answer and to be honest when they promise something and do something, especially when they use public money. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really very self-driven, and I appreciate your participation today and all the lovely presentations that you shared in advance. We had a backup, but there was no need because everything was so well arranged on your side. Thank you a lot for joining the Digital Anti-Corruption Conference that Transparency International Estonia is co-organizing with Anti-Corruption headquarters in Ukraine, in Kyiv. And I shared on the webs in our chat the link to the next part of the conference. Should you have time and possibility, please, of course, join us. We will have, again, the English language as the main language and also translation for more people to join us. And at this moment, I wish you a good day and good luck with all of your aspirations, future projects, and those one you already have. Stay healthy also.
Bye.
And take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Stay healthy. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks for hosting us.
Thanks.